You were ready. You did everything right. You worked on yourself, you prepared, you showed up, and then nothing happened. The job went to someone else. The relationship ended before it began. The opportunity vanished into thin air. And you're left standing there thinking, why not me? Why not now? Here's what Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, discovered that will completely change how you see these painful moments of waiting. What if I told you that the worst timing of your life was actually the most perfect timing you could have ever experienced? What if those closed doors, those delays, those not yet moments weren't punishments, but protections? Today we're diving deep into one of Jung's most profound yet least understood concepts, and by the end of this video, you will understand why divine timing is not only real, but why it often hurts the most right before your breakthrough. If you've ever felt like you're running out of time, like everyone else is ahead of you, or like the universe is conspiring against you, this video is for you. Stay until the end, because I'm going to share Jung's 3 signs that divine timing is working in your favor, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Let's begin. Section 1. The painful paradox of perfect timing. Let me start with a story that Jung himself often reflected on. In 1913, Carl Jung was at the peak of his career. He had everything: prestige, money, recognition. He was Sigmund Freud's chosen successor, the golden boy of psychoanalysis. His future was set, guaranteed. And then, it all fell apart. He had a falling out with Freud. His colleagues turned on him. His reputation crumbled. He entered what he would later call his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense psychological crisis that lasted nearly 6 years. 6 years. During this time, Jung was plagued by visions, dreams, and what many considered a complete mental breakdown. He lost his position, his security, his certainty. He descended into the darkness. But here's what's extraordinary. Jung later said that this period, this painful, humiliating, terrifying period, was the most important time of his entire life. It was during these years that he discovered his most profound theories: the collective unconscious, archetypes, synchronicity, and the process of individuation. Everything that made Jung came from the timing he thought was destroying him. Now, before you think that's easy to say in hindsight, let me be clear. Jung wasn't grateful during this period. He was terrified. He thought he was going insane. He considered suicide. The pain was real, but here's what he discovered that changed everything. Can I ask you something? Have you ever looked back on a painful delay in your life and realized it saved you from something worse? Maybe you didn't get that job, and later the company collapsed. Maybe that relationship ended, and you later discovered who they really were. Maybe you missed that flight and heard about the accident afterward. Comment below with your experience. I read every single one, and your story might help someone else watching this right now. Jung discovered that there's an intelligence operating in our lives that's far more sophisticated than our conscious ego. He called it many things: the self with a capital S, the collective unconscious, the transpersonal, but the core insight was the same. There is a timing to the unfolding of your life that your conscious mind cannot see or control. And the painful part? Your ego, the part of you that plans, desires, and fears, is almost always running on a different timeline than this deeper intelligence. That's why divine timing hurts. Because you're ready, but you're not ready. And the difference between those two things, that's where transformation happens. Section 2. Jung's theory of synchronicity, the science behind divine timing. Now, when Jung talked about divine timing, he wasn't being mystical or religious in a traditional sense. He was actually trying to describe a phenomenon he observed repeatedly in his clinical practice. He called it synchronicity, and it's one of the most revolutionary concepts in modern psychology. Here's what Jung noticed. His patients would often experience meaningful coincidences at crucial points in their therapy. Someone would dream about a scarab beetle, and the next day, a rare scarab would tap on the therapy room window. A patient would be describing their fear of death, and at that exact moment, a bird would hit the window and die. These weren't random events. They were too meaningful, too perfectly timed to be pure chance. but they also couldn't be explained by normal cause and effect. The patient's dream didn't cause the beetle to appear. Their conversation didn't cause the bird to die. So what was happening? Jung proposed something radical. He suggested that mind and matter, inner and outer, psychological and physical, they're not as separate as we think. At certain moments, particularly moments of intense meaning or emotional significance, they synchronize. Think about it this way. Imagine your conscious life, your goals, your plans, your timeline, as a wave on the surface of the ocean. You can see where you're going. You can measure your speed. You can try to control your direction. But beneath that wave is the entire ocean. Vast, deep, connected to every other wave, influenced by currents you can't see, moving according to patterns that are far older and larger than your individual wave. Synchronicity happens when the surface wave aligns with the deep current, when your conscious intention synchronizes with the unconscious movement of your entire being. And here's the key insight. You cannot force this alignment. You can only prepare for it and recognize it when it arrives. This is why you can't rush divine timing. Because you're not just waiting for external circumstances to align. You're waiting for your entire being to align, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, who you think you are and who you actually are. Let me share a personal example. I spent 3 years trying to force a career path that looked perfect on paper. Perfect timing, right? Young, ambitious, opportunity available. But every door slammed shut. Every application rejected. Every interview went nowhere. I was furious. I felt left behind. Everyone else seemed to be moving forward while I was stuck. Then, during a period where I completely gave up and started exploring something entirely different, something I hadn't even considered before, everything suddenly fell into place. Within 3 months, I had opportunities I never could have imagined in my original plan. Was the timing divine? Here's what Jung would say. The timing became divine when I stopped forcing my ego's timeline and started listening to the deeper movement within me. The 3 years of failure, they weren't delays. They were preparation. They were teaching me something I needed to learn. They were dismantling a false version of myself so that the true version could emerge. Jung put it this way. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But here's the thing, becoming takes time, and it rarely happens on your preferred schedule. Before we go deeper, if you're finding this valuable, do me a favor, hit that like button. It helps this video reach people who need to hear this message. And subscribe if you want more content on psychology, personal growth, and the deeper patterns of life. All right, let's continue. Section 3, the process of individuation. Why delays are necessary. Now we need to talk about what Jung considered the central project of human life. He called it individuation. And here's where divine timing becomes not just real, but absolutely necessary. Think about this. You are not born as your complete self. You're born as potential. And life, with all its timing, its delays, its frustrations, is the process of actualizing that potential. But, and this is crucial, you cannot skip steps in this process. Jung discovered that the psyche develops in stages. Each stage has its own tasks, its own challenges, its own timing. And if you try to skip a stage, the psyche will force you back to complete it, usually through a crisis. Let me break this down. Stage 1, the persona, young adulthood. In your late teens and 20s, you're building your persona, your social mask, your identity in the world. You're figuring out who you're supposed to be. This stage is about fitting in, achieving, proving yourself. The divine timing here, you need this stage, even though later you'll need to transcend it. You first need to build a strong ego, a functional identity. You can't skip this. Stage 2, the shadow, late 20s to 30s. Then comes the stage where you start encountering your shadow, all the parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, or repressed. The career path that isn't fulfilling you. The relationship patterns that keep repeating. The anger, fear, or desire you've been pushing down. This stage often feels like failure, like regression, like everything falling apart. But Jung would say this is the work. This painful period where nothing seems to work is actually the most important work. You're meeting yourself, your whole self, for the first time. I remember hitting 30 and feeling like I had wasted my 20s. Everyone else had their career together, their relationships sorted, their life figured out. And I was still dealing with patterns I thought I'd overcome years ago. But Jung would say right on time, because you can't integrate your shadow at 20. You don't have enough life experience yet. You don't have enough ego strength to face those darker parts without being consumed by them. The timing felt late, but it was actually perfect. Stage 3, the anima animus midlife. This is where you integrate the contrasexual aspect of your psyche. For men, connecting with the feminine within. For women, connecting with the masculine within. Going beyond gender roles and social conditioning to find your complete humanity. Stage 4, the self, later life. Finally, you move toward what Jung called the self, the integration of all opposites, the reconciliation of conscious and unconscious, the realization of your complete being. Now here's why this matters for divine timing. Each of these stages has its own readiness, its own kairos, the Greek word for right timing or opportune moment. You might want the wisdom and integration of stage 4, but if you're still in stage 2, trying to force it will only create suffering. You'll be spiritually bypassing your actual work. This is why comparing your timeline to others is so destructive. That person who has it all together at 25, they're on their path. You're on yours, and your path might require you to fall apart at 25, so you can actually be whole at 35. The pain you're experiencing right now, it might not be a sign that you're behind. It might be a sign that you're exactly where you need to be for the depth of transformation you're undergoing. Jung didn't publish his major works until he was in his 60s, 60 years old. All those decades of practice, study, personal crisis, and integration. That wasn't delay, that was development. That was the slow, organic unfolding of a complete human being. We live in a culture that worships speed, fast success, quick transformation, instant enlightenment. But Jung's life and work say something different. Real transformation takes the time it takes. And rushing it doesn't speed it up, it sabotages it. Section 4. Why the pain is part of the process. Now let's talk about the hardest part. Why divine timing often feels like divine punishment. Because let's be honest, when you're in the waiting, when doors keep closing, when everyone else seems to be moving forward except you, it doesn't feel divine. It feels cruel. Jung understood this deeply because he lived it. And he discovered something profound. The pain isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. Jung was fascinated by alchemy, not the literal practice of turning lead into gold, but as a psychological metaphor. And alchemists had a stage in their process called the nigredo, the blackening. It was the stage of putrefaction, dissolution, death. And it was absolutely necessary. You can't transform lead into gold by being gentle with it. You have to break it down completely. Dissolve it. Let it die in its current form so it can be reborn as something else. Your psyche works the same way. When you're in a period of painful waiting, of doors closing, of plans collapsing, you're in the nigredo. The old you is dying. The old timeline, the old identity, the old strategy. It's being dissolved. And you cannot skip this stage. Think about a caterpillar in a cocoon. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. Just waiting. Just stuck. Just suspended in darkness. But inside that cocoon, the caterpillar is literally dissolving into soup. Its entire structure is breaking down. If you opened the cocoon during this process, you wouldn't find a half caterpillar, half butterfly. You'd find goo, complete dissolution, necessary death. Only after that total breakdown can the butterfly cells reorganize into a completely new form. If you're in a period right now where it feels like your life is dissolving, where nothing makes sense anymore, where all your plans have turned to soup, what if you're not falling apart? What if you're falling together in a form you can't yet see? Jung saw this pattern repeatedly with his patients. The ones who tried to avoid the pain, who tried to rush through it, who tried to maintain control, they stayed stuck, sometimes for decades. But the ones who entered the darkness, who allowed the dissolution, who trusted the process even when it hurt, they emerged transformed. Not fixed, transformed. There's a difference. Let me tell you about a pattern Jung observed. A successful businessman would come to him in his 40s, having achieved everything he thought he wanted. Career, family status, security, everything on schedule. perfectly timed according to society's standards. And he'd be miserable, depressed, feeling like his life was meaningless. The old approach would be to fix the symptoms, adjust the career, work on the marriage, find a hobby, optimize the timeline. But Jung would say, this isn't a problem to solve. It's a message to hear. Your psyche is telling you that this timeline, this version of success isn't aligned with your deeper self. And the way forward isn't to go faster or try harder. It's to stop, to listen, to allow everything you've built to be questioned. This would often lead to what looked like a midlife crisis, career changes, relationship upheavals, identity confusion. From the outside, it looked like everything was falling apart. But Jung would see it differently. Everything is falling into place. For the first time, because for the first time, this person is listening to their actual timing rather than society's timing. The pain comes because we resist. We think we should be further along. We think we've wasted time. We think we're falling behind. But Jung would ask, behind what? According to whose timeline? For what purpose? Every moment of waiting, every closed door, every delay. It's either teaching you something you need to learn, or protecting you from something you need to avoid, or preparing you for something you're not yet ready to receive. But you have to stop fighting it long enough to see which one it is. Section 5. The 3 signs divine timing is working, even when it doesn't feel like it. All right, so we've talked about the theory. We've talked about the pain. Now let's get practical. How do you know if you're actually experiencing divine timing versus just bad luck? How do you know if this delay is meaningful or if you're just making excuses for failure? Jung gave us 3 signs, 3 indicators that divine timing is operating in your life, even when it hurts. Sign 1. Synchronicities increase during your waiting period. Here's something fascinating. Jung noticed that when people were in alignment with their deeper process, even if it was painful, they experienced more. Synchronicities, not fewer. Meaningful coincidences. Perfect timing on a small scale. Books that appear exactly when you need them. Conversations with strangers that speak directly to your situation. Dreams that provide guidance or warning. If your waiting period is filled with these moments of uncanny timing, that's a sign. Your conscious life might be on pause, but your unconscious life is very active. The psyche is rearranging things beneath the surface. During my own period of career confusion, I started experiencing bizarre synchronicities. I'd think about someone I hadn't seen in years and they'd call that day. I'd need a specific piece of information, and a book would fall off a shelf, literally fall, open to that exact page. Was I going crazy? Or was my psyche trying to tell me something? Jung would say, your unconscious is communicating. You're in the right place, even if it doesn't feel comfortable. Readiness, you're learning things you couldn't learn any other way. The second sign is experiential wisdom that can only come through the specific trial you're in. You can read about patience, but you don't know patience until you've had to wait years for something essential. You can read about resilience, but you don't know resilience until you've rebuilt yourself from complete collapse. You can read about faith, but you don't know faith until you've had to trust a process you cannot see or control. Divine timing often forces you to develop capacities you'll need for your actual purpose. Capacities you couldn't develop any other way. Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The delay isn't punishment, it's education, and you're learning things that no shortcut could teach you. Think about your current waiting period. What have you learned about yourself that you wouldn't have learned if things had worked out on your timeline? What strength have you developed? What illusion have you seen through? What truth have you discovered? That's not wasted time. That's divine timing doing its work. Sign 3. Old patterns are breaking down, even if new ones haven't appeared yet. The third sign is the most uncomfortable one. You're in the space between no longer and not yet. You're no longer the person you were, but you're not yet the person you're becoming. The old strategies don't work anymore, but the new ones haven't revealed themselves yet. You're in what anthropologists call liminal space, the threshold. And Jung would say, perfect. This is exactly where transformation happens. Remember the caterpillar soup? This is that stage, and it feels terrible because your ego is dissolving. Your old identity is breaking down. Your familiar patterns are no longer functional. But if this is happening, if You're experiencing the breakdown of old patterns. That's a sign that divine timing is working, not that it's absent. Jung worked with a woman who spent years in therapy trying to fix her relationship patterns. She kept choosing the same type of partner, experiencing the same disappointments, cycling through the same pain. For years, nothing changed. She felt hopeless, like therapy was a waste, like she was unfixable. Then one day, she met someone who fit her usual pattern perfectly, and she felt nothing. No attraction, no compulsion. The old pattern had simply died. It no longer had power over her. Within months, she was able to recognize and choose a completely different kind of relationship, but only after. Years of apparent non-progress had dissolved the old pattern completely. The timing felt wrong the entire time, but it was perfect. So if you're in that liminal space right now, if you can't go back but you can't see forward, take it as a sign. Your psyche is reorganizing. You're closer to breakthrough than you think.
Section 6. How to work with divine timing, practical strategies.
Okay, so understanding divine timing is one thing, but how do you actually work with it? How do you maintain your sanity and your hope during the waiting? Jung gave us some powerful practices. Let me share the ones I've found most helpful. Strategy 1. Active imagination. Creating dialogue with your deeper self. This was one of Jung's primary techniques. It's not meditation. It's not visualization. It's more like inner conversation. Here's how it works. First, you quiet your conscious mind. Then you allow an image, a feeling, or a figure to emerge from your unconscious. It might be a person, an animal, a symbol, or even just a presence. Then, and this is key, you engage with it. You ask questions. You listen for responses. You allow a genuine dialogue to unfold between your ego and this deeper aspect of yourself. Jung would do this for hours. He would have conversations with inner figures he called Philemon, Elijah, and others. He wasn't making them up. They were autonomous aspects of his own psyche, carrying wisdom his conscious mind couldn't access. Try this. Next time you're frustrated about timing, sit quietly and ask, what am I not seeing? What am I not ready for? And then listen. Don't force an answer. Just listen. You might be surprised what emerges. An insight, a feeling, a knowing that shifts everything. The goal isn't to get an immediate answer. The goal is to open a channel of communication with the part of you that does understand the timing, even if your ego doesn't. Strategy 2. Shadow work, uncovering what the delay is trying to show you. Often divine timing is delayed because we're avoiding something, some shadow aspect of ourselves that needs to be integrated before we can move forward. The shadow is everything about yourself that you've rejected, denied, or repressed. The anger you're not supposed to feel, the ambition you're not supposed to have, the fear you're too proud to admit, the selfishness you judge in others because you can't face it in yourself. And here's the thing. The shadow has power over you until you integrate it. This is why the same lessons keep repeating, why you keep attracting the same situations, why doors keep closing in the same way. You're being asked to face something, and until you do, the timing won't shift. Ask yourself, what pattern keeps repeating in my life? What do I judge most harshly in other people? What am I most afraid people will discover about me? What desire or quality have I labeled as bad or unacceptable? The answers to these questions often reveal what the delay is, protecting you from or what it's trying to help you integrate. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The delay might be giving you time to face the darkness, and once you do, the path often clears immediately. Strategy 3. Following your energy, not your timeline. This is subtle but powerful. Divine timing operates through energy, not through plans. Your ego makes timelines based on should, comparison, and fear. I should have this by 30. Everyone else is ahead. If I don't do this now, it will be too late. But your deeper self operates through curiosity, resonance, and authentic desire. What actually energizes you? What makes you come alive? What creates flow? I spent years trying to force a path that looked good on paper but drained me. Every step was effort. Every day was exhausting. I told myself it was discipline, that I just needed to push through. Then I shifted to following my energy. I said yes to things that energized me, and no to things that depleted me. even when they looked like good opportunities. Within 6 months, I was doing work I actually loved, with opportunities that exceeded anything I'd tried to force. Not because I worked harder, but because I aligned with my actual energy. Pay attention to your body. Energy doesn't lie. If something consistently drains you, even if it looks like the right move, that's information. If something consistently energizes you, even if it looks like a detour, that's also information. Divine timing often works through the body's wisdom, not the mind's logic. Strategy 4. Building ritual and routine during waiting. When the external world isn't giving you progress, create progress internally through ritual and routine. Jung was meticulous about his routines. He had specific times for writing, for walking, for active imagination, for work. These rituals created structure when his inner world was chaotic. During your waiting period, establish practices that ground you. Morning journaling, regular walks in nature, creative expression, art, music, writing, physical practice, yoga, exercise, martial arts, study and learning. These aren't distractions from your goal. They're preparation. They're building the internal capacity you'll need when the external timing finally shifts. Strategy 5. Trusting the compensation principle. This is one of Jung's lesser-known but most powerful concepts. The psyche naturally compensates for one-sidedness. If you've been too much in your head, your psyche will force you into your body, often through illness or exhaustion. If you've been too focused on external achievement, your psyche will force you inward, often through depression or crisis. If you've been too controlled, your psyche will create chaos. The compensation isn't punishment, it's rebalancing. So when timing doesn't work out, ask, what's being compensated here? What have I been out of balance with? What aspect of life have I neglected? The answer often reveals exactly why the timing is what it is. Section 7. The ultimate trust, surrendering to the larger pattern. We're coming to the deepest part of this conversation. The part that's hardest to accept but most liberating when you do. Jung spent his entire life studying the psyche, and he came to a radical conclusion. You are not in control of your life's timing, and that's actually good news. Your ego, the conscious you that's watching this video right now, is powerful. It can make plans, set goals, work hard, take action, and all of that matters. But your ego is like the captain of a ship. You can steer, you can adjust the sails, you can navigate, but you cannot control the ocean. You cannot change the wind. You cannot determine the currents. Divine timing is the ocean, and learning to trust it doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming wise enough to know when to sail and when to anchor, when to push forward and when to wait, when to steer and when to drift. Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. He was talking about relationships, but it applies to life itself. Every moment is a meeting between your conscious intention and the vast unconscious pattern of existence. And when those two make contact, when they're properly timed, transformation happens. But if they're forced together before they're ready, nothing, or worse, destruction. Let me tell you Jung's most famous synchronicity story. Because it perfectly illustrates this principle, he was working with a highly rational patient who was stuck in therapy. She was too intellectualized, too controlled, too defended against her unconscious. Nothing was breaking through. One day she was describing a dream about a golden scarab, beetle, a symbol of transformation, in ancient Egypt. At that exact moment, Jung heard a tapping on the window. He opened it and a scarab beetle, extremely rare in Switzerland, flew in. The closest thing to a golden scarab that existed in that region. He caught it and presented it to her, saying, "Here is your scarab." That moment shattered her rational defenses. Something beyond cause and effect had occurred, something meaningful, something impossible to explain away, and her therapy transformed from that point forward. Now here's the crucial point. Jung couldn't have planned that. He couldn't have ordered a scarab beetle. He couldn't have forced that moment of perfect timing. All he could do was create the conditions, the therapeutic relationship, the attention to dreams, the openness to the unconscious, and then trust that when the time was right, the deeper pattern would reveal itself. This is what divine timing asks of you, not blind faith, not passive waiting, but active preparation combined with deep trust. You do the work. You show up. You prepare yourself. You follow your energy. You integrate your shadow. You pay attention to synchronicities. And then you trust that when you're ready, truly ready, not just ego ready, the door will open. The person will appear. The opportunity will arrive. The timing will be perfect. Think about nature. You cannot force a seed to grow faster by pulling on it. You cannot make spring arrive in winter by wishing hard enough. You cannot rush the ripening of fruit, but you can plant seeds. You can tend the soil. You can protect young plants. You can prepare for harvest. That's your work. The timing of growth, blooming, and fruiting? That's divine timing, and it's far more intelligent than anything your conscious mind could plan. So if you're in a season of winter right now, where nothing seems to be growing, where everything looks dead, where you're just waiting, remember, winter isn't failure. Winter is necessary. Seeds germinate underground during winter. Roots grow deeper during winter. The entire ecosystem is preparing for spring during winter. You just can't see it yet. Section 8, Final Integration. Your unique timing is your unique gift. Let's come full circle. At the beginning of this video, I asked, what if the worst timing of your life was actually the most perfect timing you could have experienced? Now, after everything we've explored, I want to reframe that question. What if your unique timing is your unique gift? Everyone talks about finding your purpose, your passion, your calling. But what if your timing, the specific path of delays, detours, and divine synchronicities you've experienced, is creating a perspective, a wisdom, a capacity that is uniquely yours? 10 people can reach the same summit. But if they all took different paths, they'll have 10 different stories, 10 different insights, 10 different gifts to offer those still climbing. Your late start gave you humility. Your detours gave you breadth. Your failures gave you empathy. Your delays gave you depth. I used to resent my timing. I felt like I had wasted years, like I was perpetually behind. But now I see those years weren't wasted. They were forging something in me that couldn't be forged any other way. They were removing everything that wasn't essential. They were preparing me for work I couldn't have imagined when I was younger. My timing wasn't a punishment. It was a preparation, and it gave me something to offer that I couldn't have offered if everything had happened on my preferred schedule. So here's what I want you to hear. Your timing is not random. Your delays are not meaningless. Your waiting is not wasted. You are being prepared for something. You are learning something. You are becoming someone. And when the time is right, truly right, everything will align in ways you cannot currently imagine. Jung spent his entire life proving this truth. The psyche has intelligence. Life has pattern. Your story has meaning, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because the deepest transformations, the most profound growths, the most authentic becomings, they all require the death of who you were. And death takes time. Transformation takes time. Divine timing takes exactly as much time as it needs to take. Jung said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And I'll add, you cannot choose the timing of your becoming, but you can choose to trust it, to work with it, to let it shape you into something more complete, more authentic, more truly yourself than you could have planned. Thank you for staying with me through this entire exploration. If you made it this far, you're clearly someone who thinks deeply about these things, and I appreciate you. Before you go, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share one experience where painful timing later revealed itself as perfect timing. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. We explore psychology, philosophy, personal growth, and the deeper patterns of existence. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And if you know someone who's struggling with timing right now, someone who feels behind, who feels stuck, who feels like they're missing their moment, share this video with them. Sometimes we need to hear these truths from outside ourselves. Remember, you're not behind. You're not too late. You're not broken. You're in process. You're in preparation. You're exactly where you need to be for the depth of transformation you're undergoing. Trust your timing. Trust your unfolding. Trust that your life is making sense in ways you cannot yet see. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next video.